Robert felt his heart race as the prison door slowly creaked open. After 10 years behind bars, the world outside seemed like a distant, almost unreal dream. His steps were hesitant, a mix of anxiety and hope weighing down on him. He inhaled deeply, taking in the fresh air that felt strange, almost intimidating in its freedom. Standing at the entrance was his mother, Mrs. Louise, with a tired smile and tears in her eyes. "Son, you're back," she said, hugging him tightly. Robert returned the embrace, feeling the frailty of his mother in his arms. She seemed to have aged decades during his absence. When they parted, he saw Gabriel, his 8-year-old son, holding his grandmother's hand. The boy looked at him with a mix of curiosity and mistrust. "Hi, Gabriel," Robert said, kneeling to meet his son at eye level. "I'm your father." Gabriel hesitated but finally stepped forward, hugging Robert timidly. Feeling his son's small body against his own gave Robert a renewed sense of purpose. He knew the journey to regain Gabriel's trust and his mother's would be long and difficult, but he was determined to prove he could be a present father and a responsible son. Back at Mrs. Louise's home, Robert noticed how much everything had changed. The small house was more worn, reflecting his mother's daily struggle to care for Gabriel. Mrs. Louise coughed lightly as she served dinner, a silent reminder of her declining health. "You need to take care of yourself, Mom," Robert said with concern. She smiled, but there was a shadow of sadness in her eyes. "And you need to find a job, Robert. It won't be easy, but we have to try." Robert nodded, knowing his mother was right. He needed a job to support Gabriel and help Mrs. Louise. That night, he lay awake, thinking about how to rebuild his life from nothing. The love for Gabriel and the determination to be a better man drove him forward. The next morning, Robert began his job search. He spent the day walking through the streets of Chicago, visiting auto repair shops, stores, and small businesses, dropping off resumes and asking for a chance. However, the response was always the same: a suspicious look followed by a polite refusal. At one point, he stopped in front of a government poster promoting a reintegration program for ex-prisoners. The address of a community center was listed, and Robert decided to give it a shot. Maybe there he would find some kind of support. Upon arriving at the community center, he was greeted by a young woman with a welcoming smile. "Welcome. My name is Emily. How can I help you?" Robert explained his situation and his difficulties in finding a job. Emily listened attentively and, in the end, invited him to join a support group and individual therapy sessions. "I'm a psychologist," Emily explained. "We help people like you reintegrate into society. We can work together to find a job and ensure you have the support you need to start over." Although hesitant at first, Robert decided to accept the offer. He knew he needed all the help he could get. In the following weeks, he attended the sessions regularly. Emily helped him understand and process his feelings of guilt and regret, and together they devised a plan for his reintegration. Despite this, the rejections continued. Each no he received in interviews was a hard blow, but the support from Emily and the thought of Gabriel waiting for him at home kept him motivated. He couldn't give up. In one of these sessions, Emily suggested he try for a job at an auto repair shop where she had contacts. "They need someone to help with daily tasks. It may not be much, but it's a start," she said with an encouraging smile. Robert took the suggestion, and the next morning he went to the shop. To his surprise, he was welcomed by the owner, who seemed more willing to give him a chance. "Let's see how you do, Robert," the man said, handing him a uniform. This small victory filled Robert with hope. He knew there was still a long way to go, but he was determined to make the most of every opportunity that came his way. Days at the auto repair shop began to pass quickly for Robert. He worked hard, demonstrating dedication and skill, gradually earning the trust of the owner and colleagues. The sense of purpose and the small income he could bring home renewed his hope each day. However, the shadow of his past still loomed over him. One rainy afternoon, as he was closing the shop, Robert found Julio, his childhood friend, waiting outside. "Robert, my man, it's been so long," Julio said, embracing him warmly. "I heard you got out of prison. How's life?" Robert smiled, but there was visible tension on his face. "I'm trying, Julio. I got a job, and I'm taking care of my son." Julio laughed, but his laugh lacked joy. "An honest job, huh? Well, if you want to make real money, I've got a job for you. One last job and you'll be set." Robert felt a knot in his stomach. The offer was tempting, especially considering the piled-up bills and the need to provide for Gabriel and Mrs. Louise. But he knew that accepting it would mean betraying everything he was fighting for. "I can't, Julio. Not anymore," Robert said, trying to keep his voice steady. Julio narrowed his eyes, disappointed. "Think it over, Robert. You know where to find me." Julio's words echoed in Robert's mind as he walked home that night. He knew the temptation would always be there, but he also knew he needed to be strong for Gabriel. Getting close to Gabriel proved to be one of Robert's greatest challenges. The boy was reserved, still cautious about fully trusting the father he barely knew. However, Robert was determined to win his son's heart, step by step. One Saturday, Robert decided to take Gabriel to the park. He knew they needed some quality time together, away from daily worries. They bought popcorn, played ball, and even rode bikes together. Gabriel started to smile more, and with each laugh, Robert felt his heart warm. "I've never seen you so happy, Dad," Gabriel said timidly. Robert smiled, touched. "I'm happy too, son. I want to be the best father you could ever have." Meanwhile, the relationship between Robert and Emily was also deepening. They began spending more time together outside therapy sessions. Emily invited him for coffee, and gradually, Robert began to open up more about his past and his hopes for the future. "You're a strong man, Robert," Emily said one day as they walked through the park. "It's not easy doing what you're doing, and I believe in you." Those words of encouragement meant the world to Robert. He had never met anyone as understanding and supportive as Emily. The attraction between them was palpable, but both knew they needed to take one step at a time. However, Mrs. Louise's health continued to worry Robert. Though she tried to be strong, the persistent cough and constant fatigue were clear signs that something wasn't right. One night, she called Robert for a serious conversation. "Son, I know you're trying so hard, but I need you to take care of Gabriel if something happens to me," she said, holding Robert's hand. "Don't say that, Mom. I'll take care of you too," Robert replied, feeling a tightness in his chest. The pressure on Robert was increasing, but he was determined not to give in. He knew he needed to be strong for Gabriel, for his mother, and for himself. And with Emily by his side, he felt he had a real chance of making it all work out. The routine at the auto repair shop began to bring a sense of stability to Robert's life. He stood out for his hard work and dedication, earning the trust of the owner, who eventually promoted him to a more stable and better-paid position. This small advancement was proof that he was on the right path. At home, Gabriel started showing remarkable progress in school and his relationship with his father. Evenings were filled with stories and conversations, and Robert made sure to help his son with his homework, reinforcing the importance of education. Despite her declining health, Mrs. Louise found joy in seeing the positive changes in Robert. She felt proud of her son and relieved to see that Gabriel was growing up in a safer, more loving environment. Emily continued to be a crucial pillar of support. Beyond therapy sessions, she and Robert started spending more time together, gradually evolving into a more intimate relationship. They shared dreams and fears, creating a deep bond based on trust and respect. One day, during a walk in the park, Emily asked, "Have you ever thought about going back to school, Robert? Maybe a technical course or something you enjoy?" The idea caught Robert by surprise. He had never considered going back to school after leaving prison. "I never thought about it, but I think it's a good idea," he replied, smiling. This new goal gave Robert a renewed sense of purpose. He began researching evening courses that he could balance with his work at the shop. The idea of improving his skills and eventually getting a better job was a great motivator. As Robert began to find stability and hope, Julio continued to loom like a threatening shadow. One afternoon, returning from work, Robert found an anonymous letter in his mailbox. The message was clear. Julio knew where Gabriel went to school and could harm him if Robert didn't agree to participate in a planned robbery. Despair washed over Robert. He knew he couldn't give in to the threats, but Gabriel's safety was his top priority. In a state of anguish, he sought advice from Emily. "We can't let Julio destroy everything you've built," Emily said firmly. "We need to think of a plan to protect Gabriel and deal with Julio once and for all." Robert knew Emily was right, but the decision wasn't easy. He spent the night awake, weighing his options. The next day, he decided to take measures to ensure Gabriel's safety. He spoke to the school principal, explaining the situation and requesting extra security measures. At the same time, Emily contacted the police, informing them of Julio's threats. They began building a case against him, gathering evidence and testimonies. The tension was palpable, and Robert could barely concentrate at work. But he knew he had to stay calm to avoid raising suspicion and protect his family. The pressure on him was immense, but he refused to return to a life of crime. One night, while he and Emily were planning their next steps, Robert looked into her eyes and said, "I don't know what I would do without you, Emily. You've given me the strength to keep going." Emily held his hand, offering comfort. "We're in this together, Robert. We'll protect Gabriel and make sure you stay on the right path." With Emily and the police's help, Robert felt he had a chance to win this battle without sacrificing his principles. He was determined to protect his family and prove that redemption was possible, even in the face of the darkest threats. The plan to expose Julio was underway. Robert, with the support of Emily and the police, set up a sting operation. The idea was to catch Julio red-handed during the planned robbery, gathering enough evidence to arrest him. The night of the confrontation arrived. Robert was nervous but determined. He knew that Gabriel's safety and his own freedom depended on the success of this operation. Emily stayed with Gabriel and Mrs. Louise, ensuring they were safe. Robert met Julio at an abandoned warehouse where the robbery was about to take place. Julio was surrounded by other men, all ready to act. Robert tried to appear calm as he approached, masking his anxiety. "So, you finally decided to join us?" Julio asked with a malicious smile. Robert forced a smile back. "Yes, but before we start, I need to show you something," he said, pulling Julio aside, away from the other men. At that moment, the police moved in. Undercover agents surrounded the warehouse, arresting Julio's accomplices. Julio tried to flee, but Robert stopped him, holding him firmly until the police arrived. "You betrayed me, Robert," Julio shouted, struggling to break free. "You'll pay for this." Robert felt a pang of fear but remained resolute. "You'll never threaten my family again," he said, watching as Julio was handcuffed and taken away by the police. During the confrontation, Robert was injured by one of Julio's accomplices. The pain was intense, but he knew he couldn't give up. He was quickly taken to the hospital, where Emily, Gabriel, and Mrs. Louise anxiously awaited him. Robert underwent emergency surgery. The hours seemed to drag on as Emily and Gabriel waited for news in the hospital corridor. Mrs. Louise, though worried, tried to remain calm to comfort Gabriel. Finally, the doctor appeared. The surgery was successful. "Robert will recover, but he'll need time and care," he said, bringing relief to everyone. In the following days, Emily and Gabriel visited Robert regularly. The support and love from his family were crucial to his recovery. With each passing day, he felt stronger and more determined to continue his journey of redemption. The news of Julio's arrest spread quickly. Robert was seen as a hero in the community, someone who had the courage to stand up to crime to protect his family. This recognition brought a new wave of hope and support, not just for him, but also for other ex-prisoners seeking a second chance. Robert finally returned home, still recovering but with a new outlook on life. He knew he had overcome one of the greatest challenges of his life and was ready to build a better future for Gabriel and Mrs. Louise. Life began to return to normal for Robert and his family. With Julio's threat eliminated, Robert could focus on his recovery and the future. He returned to work at the shop, where he was warmly welcomed by his colleagues and the owner, who admired his courage. Gabriel was happier than ever. His relationship with his father grew stronger each day, and he felt safe knowing Robert was by his side. Evenings were filled with stories and laughter, and Robert made sure to help Gabriel with his homework, reinforcing the importance of education. The relationship between Robert and Emily blossomed. They spent more time together, sharing dreams and plans for the future. Emily became an essential part of the family, and Gabriel saw her as a second mother. With Emily's support, Robert decided to go back to school. He enrolled in a night technical course, seeking to improve his skills and eventually get a better job. This new phase brought a sense of purpose and renewal to his life. Inspired by his own journey, Robert and Emily decided to expand the social project to help more ex-prisoners. They wanted to offer emotional, educational, and professional support to those, like Robert, seeking a second chance. The project grew rapidly, attracting volunteers and donations from the community. Robert became a mentor to many, sharing his story and showing that redemption was possible. Emily led therapy sessions, offering essential psychological support to the participants. Robert, Gabriel, and Mrs. Louise's lives improved with each passing day. They became a strong and united family, ready to face any challenge that came their way. Robert knew his journey of redemption would never end, but he was confident that with his family and community support, he could continue to build a better future. And so, with love and determination, Robert proved that redemption is possible and that love can overcome any obstacle. His story inspired many and showed that, regardless of the past, everyone deserves a second chance.